4:30 in the afternoon. I'm going to call this meeting of the Laramie Planning Commission to order. If the clerk could call the roll, please.
Pacino is absent. Heisler White. Moody.
Here.
O'Toole absent. Schneider.
Here.
And Mattimore.
Here.
That is 4 present, 2 absent, and 1 vacancy.
I'll ask for the staff any changes to the agenda. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda. So moved. Second. Second by Jake. All those in favor? Aye. Carries by voice vote. Next item will be the meeting minutes from 11/10/25. I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. Minutes are approved. We have citizens tonight. That's great. At this part of the meeting, we generally open it up for citizen comments on non-agenda items. If it's on the agenda, wait your turn. But if you've got something else, now's the time to say it. Hearing none, we'll carry on. Staff, you're up for staff reports and comments.
We're all forgetting what we were trying to remember. Hold on a sec. Just needed a moment to jog my memory. Just as a reminder, the Planning Commission, through council direction and budgeting, you do have some budget that can be used for Planning Commission purposes. And so I'm just putting that back on your radar again, and to kind of remind you that that funding is out there for things that you think could help further the Planning Commission's role as in the community. And so I'm not asking for any suggestions or anything right now, but we'll probably bring this back maybe in January at one of our January meetings to talk a little bit more in depth about how you may want to use those funds. I think it's always a good idea, even if it's just publications or information or anything like that. I would like to use those funds, as it's a great opportunity that most planning commissions don't have a chance to get to do. So just putting that back out there as a reminder, and we'll circle back in the new year on that. Okay.
How
much is available there?
I knew you were going to ask me that, and I forgot exactly. I'm going to say it's $3,000. Yeah, 3,000.
Boy, we're in the chips. Anything else? Great. All right. Disclosures, ex parte communications, potential conflicts of interest. Anybody got one?
Yeah, on item 7A, I'm going to step on the other side to answer any questions that the commission might have related to that project.
Very good. All right. Anybody else? Yep. Carrying on. Looks like any old business, any new business? Doesn't look like we have any. We are now going to have a work session on the First Street project. Take it away, Jake.
Good evening, Chair Commission. Today we are going over the First Street project. This is something that we talked kind of a lot about in the last winter, spring, and summer. It's something that's been going on for a while. You may or may not know, but one of council's objectives for this year is to keep boards and commissions up to date on policy or major issues that are going on in the community. And so this is just an update for you all. We never gave this to you, but this has gone to City Council. We received comments, including public comments during that time. And we're just continuing that process to make sure that you all are up to date, kind of towards the end of the year, making sure that we're tying up any loose ends that may come. Just so that you know, and so the public knows, later on this week, this will be before the Parks, Tree, and Recreation Board as well. We're just going there and presenting the exact same thing to them. This is just an opportunity for you all to get involved with major planning issues that are either going to come up in the near future for you all, or potentially any adjacent things that may become problematic in the future. That's that.
How would this come in front of the commission in a direct fashion as opposed to something that spirals out of it? Or would we be approving or recommending for approval the project, or what exactly?
So very like, oh, Chair, through you. Very likely you wouldn't be approving this project directly. This being the case because this was a city council led project that they funded and I wanted to see happen. I'll just be completely forthright. If you all remember the first and Garfield parking area discussion that happened last year, this kind of came from that discussion. There's a lot of issues in this area. There's a lot of opportunities to improve various issues that are important to the city, and that's where this came from. And so we'll kind of go into that a little bit more. You will not be dealing with this directly, but some of the impacts that this may have on the community are something that you guys may deal with other downtown projects. Let's see if I have control. Okay. Like I said, this is the same presentation that City Council got. And so we'll be going over the same thing with the exception of two of the last slides, which is going to kind of go over some of the other concepts, other tries that we did to redesign this area. We'll go through an introduction on the project, go through our 2 outreach events that we did in person at the depot. We'll go over the concepts that we presented to City Council and then go over the next steps. This project, like I talked about, initially started as a parking project. It's something that we have dealt with repeatedly as a city, and we will probably continue to deal with repeatedly within the downtown commercial area. The park, which most of you are familiar with, is located pretty centrally in downtown, surrounded on the north and south side by Garfield Street and Park Street. And right next to the railway, where the depot name comes from. This project's objectives were first and foremost to improve parking in the area. As you all know, the parking area, the depot parking lot, leaves a lot to be desired. If we are out there during farmers markets, a lot of times we are standing in puddles. And so improving some of those things. That includes also accessibility in the area. One of the major things that City Council, as well as other folks, have pointed out within the city is that the city isn't always favorable to our differently abled community, whether that be aged or otherwise. And finally, we were looking to improve stormwater in the area. If you all have been down there during a major storm event, you'll recognize that, major puddling and flood issues do happen down there. The project process started with pre-design in March. Then in April, we started with our first neighborhood meeting held at the depot. In May, we did our second meeting. And then August, we presented before City Council. The meetings were looking to collect input from locals and neighbors. We sent out letters to people within the downtown commercial zoning district, business owners and tenants, as well as people who may not have been within the downtown commercial zoning district who were within 300 feet of this project. That's what we do for other planning and zoning things that require notification. And so we felt like that was an appropriate way to do this. I believe most of you got this in your packet, so I won't harp on this too much, but I'll kind of point out a few important things on it. This is kind of some of the things that came out of our initial public outreach. I'll say we were in person, but we also had this online on our Zen City platform where we have a landing page for this project. If we were looking at priority improvements during this participation process, we got 54 responses online, and we had 23 people who attended in person at our meeting. We kind of broke it down into a couple of things, but we have desired pedestrian safety updates within the area. The most important of those was sidewalk repairs, but also the second and third one were additional sidewalks and improved lighting within the area. We asked what people were using as the uses for the area, and most were special events, mostly talking about things like Brewfest, Carnival, and the farmers market. Our 81% were in favor of keeping or relocating the existing playground on the site, and desired parking lot updates included just repairing damaged pavements. We then kind of categorized how things were mentioned in there. Number one was talking about parking and traffic. Number two was talking about accessibility, and number three was talking about facilities and amenities. From that, we kind of came up with some charrettes of what the design could be in there. You can see on here, this is kind of a preliminary outline of what ultimately you see at the end. But we kind of went a concept A and a concept B for both the north and the south side so that people could look at them and talk about maybe the benefits and the issues that they saw with them and kind of go with their ideal path and also make comments that maybe of things that we might have forgotten. This is the south side. The south side, I'll just say, is primarily residential in nature. The uses that are directly adjacent to it are residences, whereas if we look at the north side, we're having mostly commercial uses up there. Yeah, this is the design for the north side of this project. We asked about the desired character of the park and the area, and park-like was a very important aspect that people enjoyed about it, and really is a major asset to the community. If we think about downtowns, there's not a lot of communities who have parks right in their downtown. Now, this is partially grace of having the depot there for so long and needing some open space in the area. Oh, and just out of what we're talking about, the preferred layout from what we had there for the south side was layout B, I believe. And the preferred layout for the north side was layout A. They were very similar though for the north side, pretty similar. We're categorizing the responses. This is the same this is Same way that we did the first meeting, this is how we did the second meeting to categorize responses. Major um, major category during that was experience and beautification. One of those was talking about the cottonwoods on there, trees, tree canopy. Next one was talking about parking and traffic, and the third was talking about infrastructure. So we're seeing some common themes as we go through this from meeting to meeting. It is, you know, generally, when we see these meetings, a lot of times we do see the same thing, and it allows us to see that either A, we're going on the right path or not. Just a continuation of that feedback summary. And I am going through this maybe a little bit faster, partially because this isn't the only thing that we're here to talk about, but we can certainly go back and talk about any of this if we need to. From there, we went to the concepts. Do you want to do this section or you want me to?
I think you can.
Okay.
You want me to? Sure.
I mean, I
Go for it.
okay.
You're
So, the concept that we have today, the primary goal of this was to improve parking. That was the outline that City Council gave us and the direction for the funding. And so, as we look through this, we have some increases in parking. This is looking at the entire project, not phased out, as a whole. And so, if we're looking at that north side, we have the Jackalope parking lot having 96, which is the major holder of parking within the area. But you'll see that on street, we have a significant improvement in parking within the area. I will say that parking within this area is somewhat tenuous to actually measure because there is some fairly permanent vehicles that stay on there related to the uses in the area. So as far as vehicles being moved off, there's not a lot of circulation. There's not a lot of flow that you would like to see within a community that opens up spots. If you remember last year, council did start enforcing a little bit heavier the 2-hour parking rule in downtown. To our knowledge and from our conversations, this area has not been a part of that heavier enforcement area, but it is. So yeah, any improvement in parking, partially from perhaps even just a little bit extra motivation to move the cars that are there, will be huge. But also on this, we have some diagonal parking spaces. These are back-in spaces, and it does improve the parking over there. But we'll have some effects on the park. Overall, this does add around 20% more spaces than are currently there from just measurements and how much we would expect to see from just the area. We also improved ADA accessibility. So the pathways are primarily through the park, kind of activating that space a little bit more and creating better paved areas. The south side of the park has no paving other than the street. There is no sidewalk and there's nothing within the park except for just going to the gazebo that's there. The north side of the park does have a little bit of paved or sidewalks. The same on the south side, or sorry, the east side of it. There is generally not a whole lot of paving or sidewalks within the south portion, but more so on that north side. We also were looking at the stormwater situation over there. There are certainly areas you can see within the Jackalope parking lot that is an issue when I talk about standing in water. Some of you have been out at farmers markets with us after rain, and there's areas that just do not flow very well, just pond there. The same can be said for the area between Sheridan and Park Street on First Street. It is an issue there as much as anything. With this specific plan, we were looking at pushing it kind of into the park and having a little bit of detention within there, something that hopefully wouldn't disrupt any of the flow of pedestrian traffic or anything like that. This is a little bit clearer view of how this park was designed and laid out. This is the south side of the park, and you can recognize that the train is still there. But through this design, we looked at moving the playground to the south side and making it kind of more aligned thematically with the area. Obviously, this depot theme, we looked at keeping it that way. And trying to unify that with this and then we also have the north side, kind of looking at keeping that more event space and keeping it as unified for the events that we currently see there, and potentially opening it up for even more, such as like concerts. You've got number one, that's looking at a rail inspired shelter slash stage. Everything within this area is rail inspired, trying to keep with that theme. Now, talking about kind of the elephant in the room, the trees were a major issue when we were looking at this. We did have our city arborist come through and do an analysis of the current situation of the trees, and looking at the north side of it, somewhat dire. They are not in good health and actually have been kind of a safety issue as well. Cottonwoods do drop limbs when they start to get older, and unanimously within this north side, our arborist did suggest removal of those trees. They've reached their lifespan and now are just a liability for us. They are still great, but they've been pruned to death. The south side, on the other hand, does present a somewhat more complicated issue. His analysis on them were just to prune them if we were going to leave them as is. They are in fairly good health. Some are towards the end of their lifespan, but are still relatively healthy. Some are somewhat towards the beginning and were planted more recently. That said, this area becomes really complicated. We did pave on the north side, and correlation isn't necessarily causation, but the trees that are there on the north side do seem to have fared worse than the area where there is no paving anymore, beyond just that drive aisle within that street. Can also see that in this area, generally you can assume that the root structure mimics the canopy of the trees, and the bottom area is showing how those diagonal parking spaces will likely impact the root structure as well. It's highly impactful. So this is kind of where we ended with City Council. We had the conversation with them about some of the issues, some of the conflicting priorities, things that they may not have thought about. We did open it up for discussion amongst them and the public as well. And from that, there was some guidance that we needed to at least look into what this project would look like if that south side was not parked anymore. So we have this north side, which looks roughly the same as what you guys saw on those previous slides. But we do have this south side that is just parallel parked. All these are pretty important to kind of consider when you were looking at, how wide the street needs to be and what sort of impact it would have on certainly those trees if that was the number one priority for this project. On that east side, there is relatively little parking that is available there, partially because of the residential units that are there. The west side does have a little bit more leeway on that. And then we did continue with the south side diagonal parking down there, which would include some improvements to that street down there. Looking at that, we did calculate how much parking would be available from that point moving forward. And if this was phased, and if this was brought in, it does look like it would be a minus 5% in the parking, overall parking in that area. So it would decrease parking. Some of that is because it's a little bit ambiguous right now, like what are parking spots, what are not, where are people parking? People are often not on the street itself, but kind of moving off pavement towards the trees. But overall, that diagonal parking is not the most efficient way, if that was what we were hoping for, is pure efficiency. So yeah, wanted to bring this before you for you guys to keep you guys up to date on this project. Obviously, there's a lot of people here who are very concerned about this project. It's an important area in town, and it is not our goal to go around the city and just remove every tree possible. I think that has been clear throughout our policies at the planning department, as well as Parks and Rec's policies. But there comes some hard things. Most cities do not want cottonwoods in their city because it is a liability overall. They do come with their own sets of dangers, and when they get to a certain age, they start costing the city quite a bit of money in claims. But this project, I want to remind you, started with how do we improve parking in the downtown? How do we alleviate some of the stresses that we see when we review projects in the downtown area in order to make sure that the future projects, future development in downtown isn't constrained by this issue every time we bring it before you. And so there's a lot of competing ideals, and none of these issues that we bring before you are easy ones. But we wanted to make sure that you were aware of what's going on with this. We've done a little bit of extra work on this from what people saw in August, and just wanted to make sure you guys were up to date.
And I got really confused because I assume that there's a recommendation being ultimately based on these various scenarios. But it sounds like we parking, but the overall initial objective was to be parking. So I think I'm confused. So that's why I'm hoping you can walk me through it again to.
Yeah, so the thing that we presented before City Council was, or the option, the concept that we presented before City Council was this concept. It's got diagonal parking and looks very different, but it is highly impactful to the trees. The conversation that we had at City Council was very centered on the impacts to the trees in that southern area. And so our instructions were to start looking at what it would look like if instead of this, we either phased it or we removed parking and had it roughly the same on that south side. And so even with this little portion over there that's diagonal, that's not currently there, we do lose parking spaces. Some of that's because the Jackalope parking lot suddenly needs to come into conformance. And
And if you'll go back up, one of the things that we found out through the process, go back to the Jackalope parking lot, just down one. That's good. So in the, does this have a laser pointer on it?
I think so.
So how do you run it? Just push the middle button.
Top one.
Okay, doesn't work. So in the upper left-hand quadrant of the parking of the Jackalope parking, we've got a number of, right there where Ryan is highlighting. We've got a number of parking areas where we were hoping that the railroad would allow us to encroach further and add some parking, and they said no. So that is some of the parking that we were counting on having that we are no longer able to acquire. So with that loss and then changing from the diagonal on the south side to the parallel on the south side results in a net loss of about 5% compared to our sort of first pass at optimizing our parking with the diagonal.
That's compared to the first scenario, not status quo.
That is correct. Yes.
Can I ask one more? My second question was taking the trees down, the fact that common don't perceive those favorably, what would you replace them?
good question. Scott, do you wanna take that one?
No, I could think that, I suppose. Good evening. I'm Scott Hunter, the City of Laramie Parks Manager. Kyle Peep is my city arborist, and so he works underneath me. I do have a ISA accredited license as well, and I've been with the Parks Department for about 36 years. So I've been around for a while. Depending on what the design actually happens, they'll probably end up putting some ornamental trees in there, which will get to be 20-25 feet. We haven't picked any of those out yet. The last arborist was looking more towards some of the maples that you see that are popular right now, or some elms that are starting to come back into fashion. A few of those have been hybridized over the years, and they're a lot more resistant to the insects and some of the other issues that we're seeing. They're all new, and we've planted a few here and there in the parks just to see how they work. We've planted a few in the cemetery to see how they grow as well. And things are looking relatively good right now. But we haven't picked anything out specifically at this time. We're still kind of waiting on to see how things progress with this particular design and what's going to actually happen downtown. If we have limited space, it'll be more into the ornamentals. If we have some good space for some of the larger shade trees, we'll go that way. Does that make sense? Okay, thank you.
So on the north side, the cottonwoods are next to mostly commercial as opposed to residential. There's not much of a visual or aesthetic impact on the north side to cut the cottonwoods than to the south where you have residences that are. Is that kind of like one idea of accepting cutting the cottonwoods on the north side?
I think that I think it is impactful in its own right. I mean, that area has had tree cover for a very long time. And not to say that the businesses don't care about it. We just didn't really hear that as a primary concern from the business owners in the area. The difference that you're going to see here is that, or that you've seen and that you pointed out, is that these trees, the north side, are going to be removed one way or another. They have to be. I mean, we have gotten to that point in their natural lives where we need to remove them. The south side is in a different situation where they're healthier. And so at that point, we have conflicting values, right? Are the trees more important than parking? in downtown. I don't know.
So, you're still getting an increase in parking. It's not what you had hoped you would get, correct?
Believe that is what Jake said. Yeah.
What is the parking need, the numbers, in downtown? What would be the increased parking for this design? How far would it go towards solving working towards solving a parking problem?
So the parking problem is a lot of opinion and I don't know. I think what we always hear when we see downtown is that there is a parking problem. From our perspective in the planning department, it is not the biggest problem that downtown faces. But as you heard from the apartment complex last year, it was the number one thing, or maybe like one or two. It fluctuated between one or two as far as issues with that complex. Like for people, we always hear there's no parking in downtown, but we have done studies within the planning department and found that there is often parking except for during our major events, which is farmers market and Jubilee days and those sorts of events, maybe game days. And so it requires a little bit of walking, perhaps. And that's what we believe that a lot of these conversations have stemmed from.
One of the comments that we were provided, additional comments, said, well, why go to all this trouble to accommodate periodic temporary events? Other ways to enhance the traffic and the flow of people in those events, opposed to just providing more parking spaces.
Right. And just to reiterate kind of the beginning of like why we brought this and what were the objectives. These were objectives from council, right? It doesn't matter if we agree with them or not. And, sometimes perspective is people's reality. And so if there's an issue with parking or a perceived issue with parking, a lot of times it may make it so that people don't want to go downtown. Maybe they don't understand where the parking areas are.
Assessment.
Correct.
Well, if I may revert back to my pre-retirement days as a 2 decades long business owner in downtown, there's never enough parking. And I can go so far as to speak for the rest of the downtown business community. I'm sure you'll find that 95% of the downtown business community would agree with me. Quantitatively, I never had a problem parking. Right. But I didn't have a business that required an awful lot of retail foot traffic, but I'm sure the downtown business community will make its voice heard on this. But I have a question about the trees. If we go with this alternate plan with the parallel parking, and does that mean we won't be able to do anything with the drainage? Because I don't see how you can fix the drainage on First Street without putting in a new storm sewer, and that's not going to do the cottonwood trees any good at all.
That is correct. I think that if we start working on the south side, and what we don't want to do is resurface the northern side of the parking lot and create drainage problems or accentuate drainage problems down the corridor or beyond the corridor. And so what we would have to do is, in order to get the water away from those houses, we would have to lower either via an inverted crown or a complete pitched road over to the west side. And that would substantially lower the existing roadway crown from where it was. And we would be, probably a foot deep or more to facilitate that drainage in that type of scenario. If we were to put a storm drain underneath, we would be able to mitigate the depth of that a little bit, but we would still have to put a pipe in the ground somewhere. And it would have to go west of the center line because there's sanitary sewer that is sort of on the west side of the road. And then even in that, we would still be impacting the root structure of the trees to some degree, not near as extensive as what we had originally planned without the trees being there, but it would still, to some level, it would impact the root structure of the trees. And I mean, even to the extent of if we were to put curb and gutter up and just do the bare minimum on the surfacing of the street, just a mill and overlay and curb and gutter, we would still be impacting the root structure of the trees to some level. That would probably be the least impactful. And I'm not an arborist. I shouldn't be speaking to that, but it seems like the least impactful, putting the pavement right back to close to where it is, would be minimal, but that wouldn't fix any of the storm drainage issues.
All right, thank you.
On that issue, so if it was a buried storm drain, would it go all the way to the south end of the park?
It would go all the way down to south or the park. That's the wrong way. Maybe I go this way. Nope. One more.
There you go.
So it would go about to where that valley pan is. We would run it into the street, and then there's a storm manhole, I believe, in Second Street that we would connect to. And it would be a smaller type pipe that would carry nuisance flows. Because the storm sewer in Second Street is already near or beyond capacity for what the design storm is.
And this is to get the water to the proposed detention pond at the south end, is that where the water would go?
Yeah, so we would kind of have a dual, we would have a storm drainage system that went out and with some sort of a limiting, like an orifice plate or something on the manhole or near the manhole. And then that water would back up, run into the detention pond. And then as the storm sewer in the street dissipated, then the detention pond would be allowed to drain.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you, Jake. We have a lot of citizens here. Would any ever you would like to comment on this? If you want to speak, go up and speak, to state your name for the record. Yeah, 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes to make your comments, and thank you for coming.
Thank you for letting me be here. My name is Marissa Pridmore. First of all, thank you to the town council and staff for listening to us and coming up with an alternate plan that does not require the destruction of all of the trees. That is the primary reason I'm here, is I like the trees. I want to see them remain. I'd ideally like to see them replaced with other tall trees. I don't think the short 20 to 25 foot trees provide the shade that makes a park very nice. And ideally, I'd like to see those put in sooner rather than later so they can have hopefully a couple of decades to mature before the current trees are removed. Second, I do not think that having diagonal parking will correct any parking problem for the downtown businesses, because the Jackalope parking lot, I walk there daily, is never full except on the farmer's market when it's filled with things other than cars. So I don't think that the diagonal parking will alleviate any downtown parking problems. And then finally, I would like to see long-term solutions that are more pedestrian friendly. I think that will help the downtown more long-term. I walk with my little girl daily, and I think that more actual and regular enforcement of traffic and parking laws will be more helpful long-term than the destruction of the park. And again, I thank the town council and staff for coming up with an alternate plan. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And these meetings are open to the public every time we have one, so feel free to show up. Thank you. So anyone else?
Hello,
Thank you for having us here for the meeting today. My name is Janelle Ross. My husband and I own property on Second Street, directly adjacent to the Depot Park. So our back entrance is on First Street. We've lived there for 11 years. I can tell you unequivocally, we are not just there for the farmers markets or for Brewfest. We're there 365 days a year. More parking is not needed in that area, especially on the south side of the park. One thing that would alleviate parking that was touched on briefly is the utter lack of enforcement of any current parking restrictions and camping restrictions for this area. Several of the auto shops in the area, as well as private citizens, now that they have come to realize that area is essentially the wild, wild west, have begun to use it as long-term overflow parking or as just a dumping ground for abandoned vehicles. Just as of this morning, there are 3 vehicles parked on the extreme south side where the diagonal parking is going to be kept in the new plans. All 3 of them have expired registration. One of them has been there for over a year, and the registration expired in 6 of 2022. Along the main section of the park, oh, it gets better. Along the main section of the park between the south side of the depot and Park Street on First, along the park, as of today, there are 13 vehicles, all of which have been there for a minimum of 2 weeks, many of them for several months. One of them has been there since May. Its registration expired in September of 2017. And just to add on to that, on the north side of the depot parking lot, between the end of the Jackalope parking lot and the depot parking lot, there are 5 vehicles that have been there for at least 2 weeks, several of them several months. I am not sure where the extra enforcement that was spoken of is occurring, but it is not there. That in and of itself is 21 parking spaces open to the public that have not been. And I will tell you, as someone who has watched this and communicated with city council and the police department on numerous occasions, this is a low number. There are times where that entire stretch is old, abandoned, beat up junk cars, and it is not at all an odd occurrence to have tow trucks dropping off inoperable vehicles along that section where they sit for weeks or months at a time. It's a simple matter of enforcement. I will tell you that very, very quickly. The police department, when we have called numerous times. I have communications with city council. No one really knows what is going on there, but I have been told verbatim by a sergeant in the police department, and I quote, "Anyone can park anything for any amount of time. There are no restrictions in this area." I have a feeling that's not true. If that is the case, that would be a very quick, very cheap way to address the problem. The parallel parking, I think, is more than substantial for what's needed for the area. Fix up the Jackalope parking lot, put in some nice curbs and sidewalks for the pedestrians in the area, and you don't need to completely destroy all of the trees and do such a major unnecessary overhaul that essentially turns a residential part of a neighborhood into an extension of downtown that no one will use. Thank you.
Thank you. Who's next?
If you come and speak, please sign in. Sure.
Thank you for letting me speak. I'm Nancy Sindelar. I live on South Second Street, across from Janelle. Talking about parking, I can show you pictures here. I went down to Black Friday, the biggest shopping day of the year, and that lot was less than half full. If you let me do share screen, I can do it from my computer. I can show you July 2nd, half full. And all the cars are parked under the trees for a reason. I've noticed the temperature change when I'm going from First Street or the alley between First and Second, and I go through there, and as soon as I get to where the trees are, it's 5 degrees cooler. The city needs trees, big shade trees, not little pretty ornamentals. And we need them all the way from I-80 to Curtis Street because they suck up the crap that comes off the railroad. Those diesel engines, sometimes they sit there for weeks pumping out that diesel smoke. and the trees catch that. And that is the value of the trees. So no matter what you do, plant more tall trees and plant them so that they provide shade for the parking lot, because that helps our community. It helps everybody, not just the people who live on 2nd Street, but the people that live clear up 30th Street, that's sucking up that diesel that we have to breathe, and it's not good for us. The lot is never full. I have never seen that. The only time I see it full is on a Saturday night after a football game, and those people should leave their car down there all night because they've had too much to drink, and they don't do that. And then we have to deal with them in our neighborhood. Now that 3rd Street construction is done, that there's better places to cross at Garfield to University because of the bulb outs and stuff they have done. Let's let this bake for a year and see if that helps with getting more people into the downtown. And let's put our priorities into making it easier to walk or bike or park on 3rd Street and walk to downtown. We don't have a parking problem. We have a people perception problem. People ride your bike, wear your helmet into the shop so they know you didn't drive a car, hopefully. And improve our ability for everyone to get downtown, even if they don't have a steel box to sit in while they're getting there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? I see some eager faces.
Planners, it's nice to talk to you. I'm wearing 2 hats tonight. I am a business owner and my family has Ludwig Photography and I've operated it for over 38 years. And then I'm the executive director and founder of the Albany County Conservancy. So first, on the business owner standpoint, I can tell you that the canopy is important and the temperature change is important, and that I have a lot of concern if we do eliminate a taller canopy in our downtown. I see a lot of people on the historic footbridge. I've seen a lot of effort go into drawing attention to that over the years, and I would like to see the downtown not become just concrete. I take trips to places like Paris, and I go out of my way to find rose gardens or one park because the entire place is concrete. So that is just a personal observation. Now, wearing my conservation observation. From personal experience, I sat on the art board, the national advisory for the art museum for over 15 years. And I point out that when Brandon Belanger came to town, it was Depot Park that he decided to put an art installation in, and it had to do with the night sky. And I'm sure that the trees helped facilitate that. So I agree with other comments made tonight that a canopy would really be desired, even on that northern side of Depot Park. It is a historic area. That was the place that the first women's jury met. And while we don't talk about that, a perception that Laramie isn't focused on history, I went to a public art conversation just 1 month ago with specialists that were brought in to listen to the public, and very much outdoor perspectives and history pull that downtown. That's who comes to downtown. And I can tell you that 25 years ago, I don't agree. There wasn't a parking issue ever anywhere because no one was downtown whatsoever. So we need to really hold true, and that's why my members had me come tonight, really hold true to what makes Laramie, Wyoming, Laramie, Wyoming. So I consider this a wonderful opportunity because you have so many people with all these different perspectives to actually do something that maybe hasn't been done before, because every community is different and Laramie is different. And so my ears really perked up when we were talking about maybe some shade trees. I would leave that to the conversations that unfold in the future.
Good evening. My name is Cody Pridmore. I'm a resident living on Second Street. Originally I was going to mention that I thought the city's plans were too big to be spending large sums of money on some of these renovations, especially after hearing the last speaker, though. I would like to say I think our plans are too small because of what was previously said, the value of what we have in Laramie, especially in the downtown, the historicity of it, just the aesthetic of it as well. It's something unique that is not present in a lot of other cities. It does not feel like Fort Collins. It does not feel like Cheyenne. It does not feel like Rawlins. Laramie is very unique, very special. We want to not only preserve that, but expand upon it as a city and as residents here as well. I do want to say that we do not want to see those trees gone, and if they are, then we want them replaced with something equivalent. I think my fear and the fear of many others is that perhaps with all these plans that have been put forth, it'll be set into motion, and as often the case in construction projects, very quickly we'll see costs balloon and the necessity to cut aspects from those plans. And so what we do not want to see is a proposal with a lot of pleasant features that eventually gets trimmed down to asphalt, concrete, and LED lighting in a place that we once cherished. So I'll leave it at that, since I believe what has already been said doesn't need to be said again. I support all the other thoughts that have been presented here. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. If I can add something for the audience in general, I'd like to see you say the same things at city council, because they're the final deciders on that. But city council does listen. If you show up and talk, they do listen. That's been my experience. Does anyone else care to speak?
My name's Megan Meyer. I'm a resident on Second Street too, and I'm in the area that floods really bad. So I do want to say thank you for like taking the storm sewer problem seriously. We were a lake. That whole block was a lake. But again, like we don't have a storm sewer outlet at First and Park. And we don't have curbs and gutters that's going to run the water that way. So like, I really appreciate that we're thinking about the storm sewers down there. And then also I really appreciate that we did that you guys were able to have a plan with the parallel parking that maintains those trees. And I would even say if for the infrastructure, if for the drainage, like it's going to be some massive undertaking that is going to probably destroy those trees, I was wondering if it's something that it could be approved, but with the caveat that it's going to start in 2033, 2035, right? Like get a new line of big shade trees planted behind where the cottonwoods are right now. Get a whole new line down First Street, give them 5-10 years to get mature, have shade, and then move into these projects. But I think the parallel parking option is awesome, and I'm really grateful to see that they listened to that. So thanks.
Thank you for coming. Is anyone else? You can sign in afterwards.
Well, greetings to the commission. Thanks for having us here. My name's Greg Nickerson, and I'm a homeowner in the neighborhood. I'm a historian, also a rail fan, and I really care about the sense of place in Depot Park, which I think is part of the historic heart of Laramie. A lot of the people who have been speaking tonight are my neighbors. Together, we represent at least 90 years of living in that neighborhood. And a lot of us use the park every day. I personally am out there every day picking up dog poop, litter, drug paraphernalia, all kinds of stuff that's out there, broken glass. My goal is to preserve the historic feel of this park and the natural asset of the trees, which I think is really important. I want to just mention that these trees were planted after the depot itself was built in 1924. So they're about a century old. It was part of a nationwide effort on the part of UP to beautify a bunch of these depot areas with parks, make them attractive places to rail travelers and local residents. So that was the vision, and that's what's been maintained up to this point. It wasn't intended for parking cars, and I think it's been mentioned that the parking lot has cut years off the healthy life of the trees on the north side. I think the primary goal of improving parking is misguided, and the current concept is based on this theory that downtown parking motorists will use this area to park, and I don't think the evidence supports that. I think so. So it was feelings like that that led me to start this petition that I sent to the commission last week. There were 649 signatures on that at the beginning of the meeting. Now there's 651. So people are actively interested in this. Not all of those are local, but several hundred of them are. So now I just want to mention a couple of specific comments. On the north side, I'd like to keep most of the improvements with new playgrounds and new infrastructure in the park on that side, and keep the swings, put that playground away from the rail line closer to First Street. I think we need some parallel spots somewhere on this street for RVs and horse trailers. I see people coming in there all the time when I'm down there with my kids. Importantly, I think we should try and keep the trees that are closest to the depot. There's two giant large trees over there that are healthier than the other ones, and they're beautiful, and they make a really nice atmosphere where there's going to be the largest gathering of people in this new park concept. We also need at least 30 bike parking spots over there to accommodate these large movements of people and keep cars off the street. South side, I've got some more comments. We should work improvements around what's already there, try and keep the historic feel. I love keeping the parallel parking. I like the idea of keeping the picnic shelter that's there, the historic one, close to the depot, because those form a unit. Put new infrastructure, like new picnic shelter on the far side, far south side. I wouldn't put a playground on that side for that reason. It's a big open green space. It's really important for this neighborhood, which is really, impacted by the rail yard. We've got 13 great trees down there, big old historic cottonwoods, and I'd like to see every effort to conserve them and their root systems, minimizing the surface damage, picking a plan that for regrading the road that preserves those trees. I also think that maybe closer to the depot could be the best place to handle that water, because I think a lot of it's coming from the impermeable roof structures a block north of all these residents that you're hearing from. So kind of north of Sheridan, there's a lot of impermeable surfaces, parking lot, roofs. I think a lot of that water's coming from there, and it might make sense to deal with it closer to the source rather than at the far end of First Street. I think I've gone over my time, but I think there's a lot of other parking solutions that have not been explored properly. We need a downtown parking study. We need to pin down the actual parking need. We need parking enforcement. We might need a couple of parking meters to keep spaces open in front of key businesses. During peak events, we could have a valet service that benefits charities and take care of those 20 times a year when you really have thousands of people downtown. And we need to encourage pedestrian and bikes first and explore other ways to increase parking, including leasing more private lots. So there's a whole bunch of solutions right there. The revisions to the plan that they were discussing that reduce the parking spaces by 5%, do the math on that, it's 2 less spaces to revise it like they did. So they were talking 35 new spaces, 5% of that's 2 less spaces. So you're still going to have something like 33 spaces. Probably they'll correct me, but I appreciate you thinking about this and listening to us.
Thank you for coming. Anybody else?
My name is Sarah, and I work down there at the south side of the park, and really glad to see that there was a revision of the plan to have the parallel parking on that end. Definitely here to advocate for preserving the trees and conserving them, and then planting new trees now to prepare for the future. And additional thoughts, especially to potentially cut costs and have some local influence on it. If you've talked to any students or programs for the university, and have maybe some native plant life there too, some native gardens to attract pollinators, hummingbirds. If you've ever been to Labont, you'll see the one that they have there with all the little education pamphlets. I think that would be a draw, and that would also promote some additional wildlife coverage as well. Just additional things to think about on top of who you are already interviewing, but then expanding the need for influence and education for the people that are here, especially the students. That was really the only thought I had. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Anyone else? Hearing none. Comments from commission?
Just like to say that the comments, the public comments that have been provided and both spoken and written, top notch. I really appreciate.
Yeah, we really like it when you show up and tell us what you think. It really makes a difference. We really believe in this. So thank you all for coming. Staff, you have anything else?
Unless there's any other further questions, I think that we kind of will leave it at that.
All
I
right.
need to correct anything. I already said what I needed to say at the beginning, so very appreciative, and we'll see where this goes.
All right. Thank you. The chair will entertain a motion to adjourn and reconvene as the Board of Adjustment.
So move.
For a second?
Second.
All those, where's
Jake's
Jake.
gonna have to make this.
There he is. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor say aye. Motion carries. We will now convene as the Board of Adjustment. Are there any witnesses to wish to speak on this tonight? All witnesses need to be sworn in. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Emma, take it away.
Good evening, Board of Adjustment. This item may be a little bit quicker. I just spoke with the applicant and the owner, and due to there being only 4 members at this meeting, they would like to respectfully request that it be moved to or postponed to the January 12th meeting. I'm not sure if the applicant has any other comments that they'd like to state, but I wanted to let the Board of Adjustment know before proceeding with the further with the item.
All right. Any objections? I just would like, having gone over this in pretty good detail today, I'm a little troubled, not so much by the variance and how to decide that. We've got lots of black and white law to deal with on the variance. What I'm concerned about is the ordinance, particularly, what is it, 15.14.090.d.2. There's a chart, table in there with that ordinance that basically looks like you can't build a metal building that looks like a metal building in Laramie. Now, metal buildings, you have to understand, were my bread and butter for 25 years. And they are probably, and I hate to use this word, they are the most affordable way to build a commercial building. And, but you can't put siding on them. Most of these they're called pre-engineered buildings for a reason, because the skin of the building contributes significantly to the strength of it. So if you have to do a facade that isn't part of the structure, right, then you have to re-engineer the building and make it beefier, and thus cost significant money. Now, money does not matter on a variance. It doesn't enter into this, but I don't understand the the roof line thing on a commercial building, I thought the roof line thing was mostly about multifamily and residential stuff, but you can't build a metal building and knock the roof up into different sections unless you want to build a leak. All right, you will get a leak every time you change the height elevations on a metal building. So I don't know where to go with this, but I think we need to maybe re-examine that part of the code. Derek?
Chair, if we want to discuss the item in hand, let's do that. Otherwise, let's discuss the postponement request, and then that would be, then you can have conversation about the variance during the item. Preferably after we speak and present, as well as after the applicant has a chance to speak. So.
Okay, well, I'm fine with that. Anybody want to make a motion?
Board of Adjustment, we would still like to take public comment if there was anyone here for this item this evening, just so we can have that on the record. And we'd also encourage anyone here to come back January 12th, or they're also welcome to submit written or emailed comment to planning@cityoflaramie.org as well.
All right, are there any public comments? Anybody online? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to postpone till January 12th.
I'll make a motion. Make a motion to postpone the requested variance from municipal code 15.14.090.d.2. Bunch of municipal codes. LMC 15.14 dot 090.5.5, municipal code 15.14.100.c, municipal code 15.18.010 for the construction of a construction industry use building at 460 West Garfield based on findings of fact and conclusive lot, or that requested postponement for the January 12th meeting.
Is there a second? Second. All right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Chair will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn as Board of Adjustment.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.